All right. You want to get started?
Yep.
All right. So we're duly reconvened at this point from earlier today at our 12:30 meeting, which is going to launch us right back into our public hearings on Article number 2. And we already heard from the board a little bit earlier. Andrew, did you want to bring something up?
Yes. So Fritz sent me an email, and we had an opportunity just to go over it with the town moderator to make absolutely sure on time limits and everything else. So I just want you all to understand the other, the full range of options here. So this, because we're having the hearing now, and this special was scheduled late. And this only happened once that I can remember in the past 25 years, is the board can refuse to issue a report. If you refuse to issue a report, town meeting cannot take up the article. Okay? So it happened before when a fairly complex article was submitted and the board at the time voted, we need to do some studies on this, we need to understand the implications, and so the board at that time said, we're not going to issue a report. And so town meeting could not take up the article. So at that time, there was a little bit of, there were some people that weren't real happy with the planning board over that, but it's an option just so you understand it. Is there any questions about that? Okay. The second part is that, and this is the repetitive petition, and there's some subtle differences that I'm glad we took a look at. So there's a repetitive petition language for special permits, and then there's repetitive permits for warrant articles, okay? So it's MGL 40A Section 5, if you want to look this up. And I'll read it to you. It's no proposed zoning ordinance or bylaw which has been unfavorably acted upon by a town meeting shall be considered by the town meeting within 2 years after the date of such unfavorable action, unless the adoption of such proposed ordinance or bylaw is recommended in the final report of the planning board. Okay, so this
Doesn't say supermajority.
It's not a supermajority. But the article, it was Article 57 of the 2017 ATM, which was pretty much the exact article here. It was defeated in a voice vote, so there was not a hand count, but it was determined that it did not reach the 2/3 majority. That would be an unfavorable action. The planning board didn't make a favorable recommendation on that article. Okay, so
The planning board did make a favor.
did make
Yeah.
a favorable, and it was
Yeah.
an unfavorable response from
Right.
town meeting.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so if you make an unfavorable recommendation in your report, which is your motion, town meeting cannot vote on this article.
Or another way to say it, the only way the town meeting can vote on this article is if we vote to recommend the article.
Correct.
And
Any other vote results in it being taken off the, well, not taken
Take
off.
no action or
Well,
something will be
it's
said
just,
at the time.
it's blocked, basically, and can't be
Right, can't be brought
taken
up.
up.
Okay.
Okay?
Do we have,
And just to be clear, it's just a majority vote here, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Mr. Chair? I
Yes,
just-
ma'am.
It's interesting. Didn't know
we
this,
could
any of this.
just- Are there people actually coming that have asked to be here? It just made me think maybe we should finish up the other cleanup items, just in case anybody shows up. if
I'm
they get
happy
caught.
to do that, absolutely.
Fine.
That's, I
Just
mean, we're
if-
here no matter
yeah,
what.
Right,
Yeah, all
just
right,
in
so.
case somebody got caught with childcare pickup or
No,
something.
that's perfectly, thank you for bringing that up, it's perfectly reasonable. All right. So we're just gonna throttle back for a
We
few
didn't,
minutes.
Mr. Chairman, we
Yeah.
did skip the construction timeframe policy
We
thing.
just
right?
took the words right out of my
Okay,
mouth.
I'm just checking.
Yeah, no, we did skip over it at this
Okay.
point, so we're gonna unless there was anything else on any of the other things that we discussed earlier, let's cut into the construction timeframe policy. So, yeah, do you want to take the lead on this, or Leslie?
I can bring it up because it did come up in that,
Last meeting.
at the subdivision, I'm trying to think of the name of it. Reliant.
Valero
yeah.
Road, a couple of them.
And so in special permits, the planning board and the zoning board have got into a practice of putting time restrictions on certain projects that are in the denser areas, where construction is likely to impact their neighbors. We have not done so in our review of subdivisions before. I will say that we received numerous complaints this past summer about ongoing construction and the effects that it has on the summer visitors here. So I don't know if you all have heard complaints like that, or that's something you want to get into. We have a noise ordinance which is in effect from 7:30 in the summer. It's 7 o'clock in the non-summer
time.
hours, and it's about the operation of really power tools. It was a great debate on town meeting floor, back and forth on these particular times, and that might be another avenue that the noise ordinance is revisited. That wouldn't be by you, that would be a recommendation that you would send off to the
Yeah,
select board. So, I don't know what your feelings are about it, but since it did come up and since it's something that we've heard about.
this is-
Leslie, go ahead.
For the two new members, the general time frame that the planning board uses for summer construction, they prohibit it from, I think it's June 15th to September 15th, and also on holiday weekends, so like Memorial Day.
There's a later time on Sunday, I think, too,
Yeah.
right?
Can I just make a,
You said June 15th till,
September 15th.
yeah.
So,
And is, I'm sorry.
go ahead. No, no.
Is it limited by time of year? I maybe have missed that.
The noise bylaw
0,
is 7 a.m.
10.
Let me rephrase it. So the noise bylaw prohibits certain noises between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Yeah.
in the off-season, and
Yeah.
10 p.m. and 7:30 a.m., I think in July through September, maybe June through September.
I didn't mean, but I mean by, what I meant to say was by a geographical. Is this island-wide, or is this just town, or is this on?
Noise bylaws island-wide.
Yeah,
The construction limitation typically placed on permits by the planning board and the zoning board are areas in town.
in town.
That's
Yeah,
not
okay.
really
I just want to clarify.
solidly defined.
Okay.
Yep. Can I
Yeah, no, go right ahead, please.
Yeah, this is good. Leslie just said one of the points I was gonna make. This is something that is more of a clarification issue, other than a question of, kind of a new discussion. The Point Breeze was the big one, okay? They had that place jacked up. They reached this point where they needed 2 more days or 1 more day for the crane to do, I can't remember what it was, but like they couldn't do anything without 1 more day. But they were at the 15th, which was in the original decision before, what's his name, disappeared,
Snyder.
right?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
No.
So then came Dreamland, same thing. But at that time, it was just a few years later, all of a sudden there was a work bylaw that never existed, and that's why Leslie's talking about the noise. We never had a working in town bylaw by the town. This was just something that we did with
Got it.
permits, big projects, and then it morphed into these dates, and then we modified it. What was the one? Didn't we do like the 20? We went by a calendar, 21st or something. We did something specific for the Dreamland because they needed they had the sidewalk block with plywood and
Right.
staging, as I recall, was that. So, but I think part of your question, Fritz, was different than that. It was about how long can we continue things was
No,
one
no,
of the
no.
issues.
I just misstated.
Because
the
that's
first
a
part.
good point.
Oh,
We
well,
we've
then
sort of.
obviously that's what the point.
I mean, that
trying to
was
make.
something that we. Well, no, I mean it's a good point. You see something on the, I was going to say schedule on the agenda, for like 2 years.
Yeah.
There's reasons, and they're complicated, and it's come up with a little bit with the Chicken Hill project,
Yeah.
whatever that's called, I forget, but that's what I call it. So,
Excuse me.
so you know, this is a good thing. This is sort of like the tertiary in the bedrooms. It's sort of like, what's the noise bylaw versus can we enact something on a project out of town? That's been brought up, like Nantucket. Can we say, even though we don't have special permits out there usually as far as like a construction project, but can that, you know, that, I think that's a good discussion because a lot of people don't know about the 10 p.m. in the summertime. A lot of people don't know it's out of town. It's everywhere. You can't have a party at midnight just because you're not in town with a band, you know, in your yard at a wedding or something. You know what I'm saying? So that's I mean, I think there's two separate issues involved in this, the special permits downtown versus some of the other stuff. So, anyway, that's all I have, whatever that was worth.
This is maybe more of a question, but I think it surely would be a hardship on people who are doing building if the whole island had to shut down during the summer, because that's the
Oh.
best weather, and
Yeah.
it would drive costs up, and there'd be a lot of bad side effects of that. I know I've lived
Couldn't do
where
it.
I live, and having people pounding across the street all summer is not my favorite thing, but on the other hand, I think that wouldn't be fair if it really affected people's livelihood, and especially if it would mean that I'm sure costs would go up if we went that far. So I think part of it is that I think downtown's different
Yeah.
because it has to do with if you're blocking roads and
Sidewalk.
sidewalks and things like that. It's also like a safety hazard if and it makes traffic worse and everything else. I'm afraid if you would maybe know, but the whole electric company, whatever they're going to do over the next couple of years, is going to be a real mess down there too. So I would think that's another reason that you don't want to have other things going on down there to make it difficult for them to get that work done expeditiously. But
Pleasant
it's
Street,
kind of
right.
uneven. If even if you pick some other places out of town, it would seem to me if it's been applied only for special permits, you still have noise and you still have dust and that kind of thing for other smaller projects. So that seems to me like a pretty slippery slope.
It's
But-
complicated. I mean, I think leaf blowers are stupid, but air nailers aren't a big deal in my mind, but I can't stand the leaf blowers. I think they're the dumbest thing that's ever been invented in my life. What happened to a broom?
Yeah.
But the problem is you're getting into, it's in the daytime, and they've become normal.
Yeah.
Like normal. Like
Yeah.
they use them for things
Yeah.
that I didn't even know you could use them for now. You know, it's become like standard. So
So what's the weirdest thing they use them for?
they use them to break up wet grass piles in a yard instead of raking them.
Okay.
So that's, anyway, I saw that a few years ago. I couldn't believe it.
So was this just put on for discussion, or
I
was
think
there some
so.
action?
I mean, the only other thing that I would say that's relevant to this, that's new, is what we did with Six Fairgrounds. I mean, we put some, even though it's out of town, we didn't, what did we do? We did stuff about Sundays.
Yep.
Saturday at noon, I think, unloading trucks, and that was all they could do or something.
So, sort of what I'm hearing is, outside of, the downtown where the board has traditionally put this limitation on construction during the course of a special permit
Exterior
hearing.
construction, by the
Or
way.
did I say interior?
No, but
Oh,
I just want,
be clear,
yeah,
yep.
it's exterior.
Maybe for any other areas, we'll just take it on a case-by-case basis with our recommendations to the board. Like for instance, with Six Fairgrounds, that's
Yeah.
a huge project.
Yeah,
That's-
it's huge. They had to have something, you know.
Well, and typically isn't there also like where the construction vehicles and gear is gonna be parked and how, so it's like trying to manage the whole, outflow of what the project's gonna create. So as long as we still have authority to deal with that for like very big projects or something, that seems reasonable. Do we need to have a written policy on this that is clearer?
I haven't heard
Right.
that you're really interested in
The
that,
only-
so.
The only one though that I would say, another thing I just thought of is the stuff on Darrymore. There's those R1 zones
5,000.
and like what happened across, you know, what's the name of the little road?
Across from
Something Natural.
Something
What's that
Natural,
called?
those are bigger, yeah, where you got multiple houses, multiple
Those- now
trucks.
that project didn't affect Cliff Road as much because they could park inside
Interior.
the project
Yep.
except for, you know, any sewer work
Yeah,
and stuff. I'm not talking about that.
But you
I'm
did
talking
have
gateway
noise
work.
of people who are summer residents who are
Right.
backed right up and the neighbors
Yes.
20 feet across the fence.
But that is a, you know, regular approval, AR, HDC. But those are the kind of things I think that raise lots of questions with neighbors because they don't know. Like, say if somebody lived there and said, well, how come they kept working past June 15th? Well, it's not a special permit, it's not, you know. So I think that that's something that.
So is there a
discussion.
town policies that the select board or somebody else imposed that created this constraints on downtown? Or that's just widely understood?
The downtown, well, see, there's been misconceptions about it because people have said, as Nat just said, like, what are these people working? You know, they started up at 7:30.
Yeah.
Why are they working in downtown at all? And the point is the bylaw doesn't, they're in conformance with the town bylaw. But there were certain projects, again, that the ZBA
permit.
and planning board, ZBA generally, if you're applying for a special permit or a variance, and ensconce it in the, you know, in the more congested areas, the ZBA tends to put a restriction on. You know, that's their purview to do. Do they have a written policy? No. But a lot of times it comes out of testimony from, you know, at the public hearing. We have not put, I mean, I will say we don't have a whole lot of subdivisions, you know, in the old historic district, and we've had those two. We've had the one on Cliff Road and the one in the Delaney area there.
Al Silva.
Generally
property
where
one.
there's a 5,000 square foot minimum lot.
Do you think there's any benefit to have a policy so people understand it? And would we be the ones enforcing it through planning department, or would it be a police offense if somebody's blocking where they shouldn't?
Well, I think it would be, we could either put it in our rules and regulations for subdivision, which we don't have it in there right now. So it would go there, or, you know, some sort of policy, the board may put this type of conditions on its approvals, you know, that it has an opportunity to do.
If, obviously, we have jurisdiction over some matters the zoning board has. Give me an example. For Darrymore, well, no, I'm trying to think of something they didn't have to come to us for, and I don't have that much history. So the one across the street from Something Natural, did that have to come before the
Yeah,
planning board?
that was here. Arthur
Okay.
was on that one.
So any of those that didn't come before the
Thinking about
planning board?
Music Center, Andrew. Was that a ZBA? I'm pretty sure it was.
The music.
Let me ask it in a different way.
Yes.
If the ZBA and the planning board had a policy that was identical, would there be any situations in which somebody could likely be building something that would be objectionable, that wouldn't be covered, wouldn't have gone to one or the other? There would be. Just normal building on a lot?
Right, so
HDC.
if you didn't require a permit from the planning board or the zoning board, or you were doing maintenance on your house or something, then they wouldn't be subject to those same construction restrictions.
Like a
But that would be building a house on a single lot within all zoning setbacks,
It could be a
coverage.
renovation,
could be a renovation.
which is even, could be just as noisy. I mean, you know.
Right.
Without any,
And the only other way to do it would see if the select board would establish a policy that applies to everybody for everything.
Right, to amend the townwide, and it could have subsections carved out of it. It doesn't, the current bylaw applies townwide, but it could have, seasonal restrictions in certain zones or whatever.
I would just, my reaction is it'd be better to have a select board policy that's consistent and that their policies would be enforceable how? Through,
Police officer.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of like hours of operation
Yeah.
type stuff. That
it
sometimes
seems to me
there's
to be
select
more
board
suitable,
stuff that
you know,
mixes
'cause
in.
they're gonna observe it or be able to nip it if it's happening and it's causing problems or something like that. We're not.
Yeah, what's our
well-
enforcement?
Well positioned to try to do that.
Yeah.
And I think too, they would have a chance to really put it on for hearing and hear from the people downtown or whatever. Because I think it does implicate, well, getting emergency vehicles through, bikers, all the rest of that kind of stuff. So it feels to me like it really should be their province. And maybe we can still have discretion over special permits under some circumstances, but.
I mean, there was an article. What was the one with Jim Lyden and the ladders on India Street? Remember that? That was like 6-7 years ago.
That was the change in the noise bylaw because it used to be 7
Okay,
o'clock
noise bylaw.
AM year round and it moved to 7:30.
Okay, so that triggered that change. Okay. Just
I
another
would-
little thing I thought of.
My thoughts are these. I think, to me, it rightfully belongs as a city or as a town item that the select board ought to decide what it ought to be, and whether we make a recommendation that that they should set the rule or however we would communicate that. If for some reason they don't do it, or they don't do enough that we think for certain circumstances, for instance, there is a larger subdivision thing, and we don't think whatever they did or didn't do is adequate, we'd always have the opportunity to put it in as a condition. Correct?
If it's something that comes under us, we can do that with a regular AR, right, Andrew?
We routinely consider it under our special permits. We have not extended it to subdivisions, but
Yeah, okay.
it could be.
So I think I would suggest we suggest that they do it, see what they do, and obviously we have the right to then do something else if we so choose.
Okay.
Is that correct? That's just my thought.
Yeah. So do you want it subdivisions island-wide, or do you want it subdivisions in certain areas based on, I think the more we can kind of hone it down a little bit. I mean, and if you're fine with it.
I think the ROH, R1.
You mean for what we're suggesting they do?
Yeah. I mean, because they're gonna, I think just, saying for subdivisions, I mean, if you want to leave it at that, fine.
No, I wasn't suggesting subdivisions. I was saying leave it wide open to them. We think you, the town select board, ought to set the rules on time of construction, seasonality,
Okay.
all of those rules.
You want to keep it
everything,
Keep it wide open and let them.
decide what they choose to do or not do.
Got it.
And we always have the option. For subdivisions, we may have to then formulate a rule.
Right.
But we can always do that.
Okay.
And we always have the ability, and the zoning board always has the ability in a special permit
Oh,
to
absolutely.
do what we've been doing.
Absolutely.
But if we don't have to do that, then it's in the hands of the town and the town administration to be explaining to enforce and to be explaining to people what the rule is.
Yep. Got it.
I mean, I think that to get back to that, I'm never going to think of the name of that road across from something natural until later. But that little new road and the Russell Pope property and the other development that you're
Delaney
seeing is triggered a little bit of a conversation about this from that point. I think that, we used to have joint meetings occasionally with selectmen and certain things would come up, different policies. I think that this is something that we should be weighing in a little bit if we gave them a recommendation, because we understand the areas that this stuff happens, like the R1 and the ROH and the SOH. I mean, that doesn't really happen that much, although something big just happened on Broadway this year. A lot, just, there's one big project on Broadway that happened this year though, so, where that may be a good area to look at a little different town bylaw for construction, you know, in
Yeah,
the summertime.
I'm not opposed to,
Definitely summer, not, you can't do anything in the winter,
Yeah.
that's,
If you wanna
crazy, but,
give them guidelines on what we think.
yeah.
And rather
I
than
think
just
it's
say
a
we
good
recommend
point. I
you.
mean,
See-
this probably has already been some discussion about that a little bit with some of the stuff on the cliff, but, I think it's a worthwhile concept to think about in a couple of zoning districts. It's not just about parking and trucks, it's about summer
Yeah.
and just,
So,
you know,
is it-
weekends, that kind of stuff.
Tranquility,
So do you want to think about it more and come up with things?
we
Because we
should.
don't have to worry about
Maybe
it
we should
until
let
next
staff
June?
look at that a little bit. Yeah,
Okay.
It's not a bad idea,
Okay.
Does
so.
that feel
And we'll
good
then
you
try to
guys?
refine what our recommendation might be.
All right.
Okay,
I guess
thank
if you
you.
have any thoughts in the meantime, forward them off to Andrew exclusively and see where it goes. Okay, great, thanks. And
What was the other thing?
board delegation to staff on A&R endorsements. So,
Oh, so
Right.
you clean that up,
Well, Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
I want to be absolutely clear, like, staff does not want authority to sign off on A&Rs. We want the board to look at it, and we would sign to reflect your vote. That's all we would do. I mean, or not, it's up to you. It's just I know that corralling you all to sign the individual plans.
Yeah.
There was a point in time, I think, when just the chairman signed the A&Rs.
That's what I was thinking
And then
of.
the board at the time said, we don't want that to continue. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So basically, since the 70s, the full board has signed the plans. But it's been brought up to us that there are a lot of people a lot of towns that don't require that all. So
So it's purely an administrative act.
it's administrative
Right.
after the fact, so.
Well, and you're trying to expedite things too, so it would pick up a couple, 3 days for people. And some of us might be away and all the rest like that.
Yeah. And Barry had mentioned, I mean, I think it's important that it's one of the staff, it's either myself or someone that has the AICP credentials, which, you know, covers ethical requirements and everything else to make sure that's the same plan that you saw. So,
So what's the proper procedure? Would you like a motion
I
asking?
did you have anything else, Leslie? Or I'm sorry.
Well, Barry and I had talked about ANRs, which you have that information in your packet, as well as the secondary dwellings and the tertiary dwellings. So those letters would say, you know, the board voted, you know, whatever the vote was. And instead of having the chairman or vice chairman sign it, we would just do the administrative signing
Yeah.
after the board votes at the meeting.
Less signing for us and less of them having to corral us down at times to get it done.
Yep, so can we entertain a motion to
love you to do
move
that.
ahead with this proposal with the understanding it's not to take the place of our review, it's simply about the signing of the documents, both for A&Rs and secondary and tertiary.
Yep.
I'd second that.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Okay, that clears the docket for other business pretty much. So here we are back at the public hearing at this point, and we had a request to continue this up to 4:30 this afternoon. Unfortunately, I've got Mr. Fredericks here, who's a brand new face, thank you, and
I
somebody
think,
else.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a question?
Yeah,
Can
go
you,
ahead.
can I just like ask staff to explain, Diane just came in and missed that thing at the beginning about.
Oh, yeah, please-
Andrew's-
yeah, please do.
Andrew got the book out in between these hearings.
okay.
So
So
just,
just for clarity on, there are two things that we discussed with the board before you got here. And the first one is a time-related issue. So in order for town meeting to basically take this article up and discuss it, the board has to issue a report. And the board has 21 days from this hearing to issue that report. And obviously, town meeting is going to happen before that time. So if the board votes to refuse to issue a report, the result would be that town meeting can't discuss it, can't hear it, okay? Now, that's only happened, as I explained to them, only once in my 25 years here. So but again, I want them to understand all the options here so that they know that it's possible. The other thing is that, and this is because there was a similar article brought before town meeting within a 2-year window. This came before the town meeting in April of 2017, essentially the same article, which was LUG2 to R40. And if the board doesn't issue a positive recommendation, it cannot be heard at town meeting because of that time. So just so we're clear about that.
Great.
Okay.
So is
Good.
there more testimony? The gentleman in blue, did you want to speak to this? Because
No.
if not, then we can close.
We can kind of move ahead, yeah. Just what I want to say, and I'm sorry, I need to bring it up because it really is bothering me at this point. I understand we get very passionate about things sometimes, and I love passion because it really can drive things. And when we tend to disagree as well, too, that's not such a bad thing. Because sometimes we formulate our best decisions looking at alternate viewpoints on things. But, what has caught my attention recently is that there was personal attacks on staff, there was personal attacks on Diane O'Neill, and I, for one, am not happy with that. I'm shocked. The behavior is shocking to me at this point. You can agree to disagree, but you don't have to be disagreeable to disagree. And that I'm sorry to say that's taking place in our world today on a big level, but it doesn't need to be here. My God, this is a small island, and we all get to see each other. We all have to work with each other at this point. So I'm flabbergasted. I'm surprised by it, and I will tell you personally at this point, inside these 4 walls, I will not allow that to happen. I would hope people, we all get a little hot-headed sometimes. I've done it myself too, but I've learned afterwards to go back and apologize for my behavior as well too. Maybe that's all this simply is. But the continuance of this, as far as I'm concerned, is a big black mark on this island. And I would hope we see ourselves clearer in the future. So, sorry to have to take more political or personal privilege.
I
But
just
it-
want
it
to
just-
thank you for saying that, and I think that you're seeing everybody's heads nodding. We really appreciate your making your views known and standing up and speaking, and thank you for speaking your mind.
Thank you. Did you want to say something else, Frederick? Yeah, go ahead. Mr. Fredericks, good evening.
Dave Fredericks, for those of you who don't know me, I think most people here do. I don't have anything incredible to say. I think it was a point of history, though, and I think it's relevant to what Ms. O'Neill put forward. Probably Andrew helped me 4 years ago. I came and I spent the better part of 10 years working with my neighbors in the Boulevard, in Okoa, and a bunch of areas out in that general side, saying that LUG2, given the significant growth and changes in the environment on Old South Road, out by the airport, and many of the areas that kind of abutted it, really led me to believe that in the long term, for several reasons, a lack of LUG1 property being available, and that I had an underlying fear that these larger undeveloped lots in the general area, when put together, would constitute a behavior by developers that we might not like. And what I was referring to is what happened at 46 Surfside, I remember the exact
106.
numbers, 106,
106.
where
Yeah.
people put together 4 or 5 acres and started saying, wow, let's do a 40B where there's no sewer, where there's no public access, but the land's big enough to leave an acre to manage sewer on site. And guess what? We'd get the absolute worst, which was a 40B in the wrong location. Now, we could debate the right, but right now the state says the right is, do you have good public access nearby? Do you have access to water? Do you have access to sewer? Is there good roadways in the area? A lot of these kinds of questions. And I don't know if it belongs here or not. That's not my relative point. But what something like this rezoning in a thoughtful way does is it also sends a counter trigger to developers, which by the way I do a lot of work for, that, oh, there's another way to drive revenue out of some of these bigger properties other than just 40Bs and maybe where we don't want. It failed at town meeting. I had 48% of the people voted for us, 52% voted against us, and that article didn't happen. And that's okay. But that was 4 or 5 years before this concern started coming up. And so I think one of the cool things that I think we should really think about as a community is this is not going to go away. I won't get into my past or why I feel this, but I know enough about, because of my life and where I'd spent 8 or 9 years in Boston, there's a lot of passion around 40B. Recently, the governor's come out again and made a bunch of comments. You've heard today the folks in Boston just came out and said, we are now going to support, I don't remember the number, 12,000 new units over the next 2 years. But the governor has repeatedly said, we need to strengthen this law. We need to push more of this out to all the communities in mass. So this isn't going to go away. And we have to realize that sometimes these kind of zoning changes that some people think we're getting a benefit from are actually a benefit to the bigger community. So that's just something to think about.
Thank you.
Couldn't agree more.
Anything else, board members?
No, I mean, I want to actually thank you, Barry, for saying what you said, because I wanted to kind of say something like that. Wouldn't have been as friendly, I don't think, because I've been watching this, and I've lived in this area since 1987, and there was hardly anybody down there then, and in 72 there was nobody. Hardly anybody in 87, nobody in 72. And this is really about the imbalance of zoning and the negative ramifications that, you know, Dave just mentioned. Contiguous land in the sewer district. I mean, that is like, how many football fields can fit into the Malcolm property? 20? There's a lot of land there. We've rezoned a lot of the locals' areas there, including mine. The people across the street have R40. We have housing right next to it. We have Sherburne Commons right next to it. And there's this pocket, 14 acres owned by one family in LUG2. It might as well have been MMD. What difference does it make? Because it's not gonna, this isn't a spot that is, I call it gentrification. I don't know what the other word is, but this isn't a swimming pool area. This isn't, meaning the sprawling big lot with interior roads and outbuildings and all that stuff. This is a sort of a year-round area with this weird lug 2 in the sewer district. So I don't know if any of you watched my little video I just did with Gino, with Georgia, but I see this as a stalemate between the developers that bought it, the town meeting that didn't change it 5 other times, getting to this. Now we're digging our heels in and saying we don't want to give them anything. The problem is that, as Dave just said, they already got it from the state. We didn't give them anything yet. That's why they're pursuing this. This article does nothing except a handshake of goodwill from the biggest body on Nantucket. That doesn't change a thing with the 40B, what they can and can't do, but it does say gives them a conscience. They have to look in the mirror. They have to go to Stop and Shop. They have to think, wow, we just got town meeting to say yes. Maybe we should rethink. Maybe we should come to the table. This is like sort of Kim Jong-il and whoever else, or whatever his name is. You know, this is something, somebody has to make a chess move beyond just signs and yelling and saying no and we're going to sue. That isn't going to work here. This is never going to work with lug 2, and it could, and you know, the benefit is all them with 40B. I don't want that development to happen. I don't even want the new proposal to happen. This is less, a lot less, with some modifications. maybe they'll put the brakes on. Maybe we don't know that. Maybe they'll sell it. At least it's worth more money if it's in 1 acre. It's just a bad decision from 40, 50 years ago that's just sort of hanging out there, and that's why we're here. So, I mean, I'm in favor of it just to have a conversation. It's hard to have a conversation at town meeting. Really hard. You got to call the article and sponsor it to talk more than 2 minutes before the bell goes off. I don't know. Just 106 Surfside. I'm glad Dave brought that up because I'd forgotten all about that. That was only a week ago, really, and I forgot all about it. That was a big. How many acres was that? 100,000, almost 100,000 square foot lot. It was like 98 and 96 or something. You know, old property owner, didn't pay anything for it, sells it for whatever, and DJ picks that thing up and bada bing. It's not an area for the big, huge, sprawling Pocomo lots. Neither is this. Any real estate agent will tell you if you ask them. They just won't tell you. They may not tell you publicly on camera, but they know that it's not that kind of area. So, that's all I have.
Anyone else? Sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll speak to it. This is one of those occasions where we get to disagree. Number one, this is a proposal that has been before town meeting several times and not passed. At that time, not passed with some support from the neighborhood. I understand this is motivated by the 40B. I don't know I have no reason to believe that in absence of 40B, if this were coming up, in other words, if there were no 40B and this were simply coming up again on the agenda, I have no reason to believe that the result would be any different than it would have been, than it was the last 2 or 3 times that it came up. As to whether or not this will make a difference to the developer of that particular, or the owners of that particular development, I have no reason to believe that it will. I went to the last hearing, and I heard their Boston council very clearly say they were not going to withdraw the provision. I mean, they were going to come back with a proposal, but they were not going to withdraw, and they weren't going to go away. So my concern is, in light of having, unless there's some indication from the developer, in other words, I would feel very differently, I think, if, given the fact there's a 40B development there, if a developer said, you know, we would really consider withdrawing, or we will withdraw if we rezone this, then I would be the first one to say, I think that question now is something that the voters need to make a decision about, that I shouldn't be the one that's preventing them from doing that. But we don't have that. This is purely a hope that they might be reasonable people, from some people's perspective, have a conscience, do whatever it is, be less profit-driven. I mean, they have come back with I don't know if you've seen it, they've come back with a proposal for a less dense development in just the last week. But I have no reason to believe that the passage of this is going to do anything whatsoever. My concern would then be if for some reason that doesn't go through and they sell the property, now they've gotten the benefit of the rezoning, which the town, voters, and the neighbors have on several occasions said, we don't want you to do that. So for that reason, and I am not in favor of a favorable, whatever the particular language is. I'm not in favor of this particular article. That's me.
Do you want to say something?
I just want to say thank you again for trying to find solutions here. That's I know it's heartfelt, and I really do appreciate that. I'm not going to support it either, and I've given a lot of thought to it. I think many of my reasons resonate with what Fritz said. It had just come up. I worry, I don't know whether it would make a difference on review or not, but we came out strongly as a board saying the proposal for the 40B as initially presented was too dense. And I don't know if there's then some kind of expression by the public providing a different scenario that shifts the density around, if that might undercut the reasoning or the review for the 40B decision, whatever the ZBA ultimately comes up with. I don't feel comfortable having this kind of a situation. This is one case, but if the kind of culture on Nantucket is, if you want to get zoning more favorable, you file 40B, we end up with real problems in terms of creating practical patterns of behavior, that if somebody's going to be coming in with super dense, inappropriate kind of thing, that then without any assurance that they're backing off of that, they can go as far as they go, and then there'll be some kind of a backing off. So I really can't see that, and I think the third part of it is the fact that it's been turned down within the interval. So I respect what you said, Nat, and what others, I'm sure Barry and others are going to say, but that's sort of where I come out at the end of the day.
Well, that was perfectly. Thank you. You know, these decisions aren't ever easy, but you know what? I first of all, thank you for the dialogue. We agreed, we
Appreciate it.
disagree, but you
Yeah.
know what? No, this is where I'm going back to my little talk from earlier. It's very civil. God bless you. That's great. That's what it needs to be. So, I'm going to tell you, my own personal thought is I'd like to bring it to town meeting. I'm a very big fan of letting the voters weigh in on certain things, because some of these issues, I think, transcend the scope of a board. They really become community issues at times. And everything that the two of you have said to me doesn't fall on deaf ears. I agree with that. I mean, I'm not a fan to say I want to bring this back again. I really don't. But you know, I've also found too, sometimes sitting here, that I'll walk into something and I'm listening to things. We're getting down to the wire, and I've already kind of got my mind made up a bit. And at the last minute, someone will come in at times under testimony and completely change my mind with a comment that I had never thought of or entertained in my life. And that's taught me a very valuable lesson, is to be able to throttle back to that last minute and say, okay, let's see what happens here. Maybe someone will provide the solution. Yeah, and you know, I'm sorry, maybe I'm going to be the eternal romantic here as well too. Fritz brought up the word hope. You know, I got to tell you, in my profession as a pharmacist, hope is such an important thing. I've seen it change the tide of things in such tremendous ways. Where all else is destined to fail, sometimes that's the last thing people cling to, and it changes things. Miracle of miracles. So I'm sorry if I'm waxing a little poetic here at this point.
Oh, I think that's
No,
great.
no,
But
I'm-
I'm just saying, no. I'm just saying, it's me, and I'm kind of apologizing to the audience too. But you know, those kind of things to me are really important to say that you don't know in the end. And you know, I for one would just like to be able to run the game to where it brings to a final conclusion. Because you know what, no matter what, in my book, it's what it is, and move along. It's fine. So I really appreciate the dialogue from all of you. Thank you really very much.
Can I just add one thing?
Please.
I just want to make sure that everybody's kind of clear on. It was only at the last minute that actually, when we were having the discussion dealing with something else, that it occurred to me that when we were talking about what's the ramification of a negative vote and whatever, that occurred to me that all of a sudden what you were talking about applied to this. So I didn't bring it up for the purpose of preventing
Yeah.
this from going to town meeting.
Right.
That was not my,
Separate
I was
issue.
when I came,
We didn't
when
do
we
that.
started this hearing, and when I was thinking about it, I was perfectly happy saying, my position will be, it's going to go to town meeting. I simply want my position, and I would hope the board's position to be, we're not recommending this. But as it turns out, I'm also now, given the current situation, I'm not prepared to vote for it, saying I recommend the passage of this. And that I can't do either, because I don't. You know, I would vote against it at town meeting. So, I mean,
But there you go. And that's, see, that kind of goes, here we go. Boy, talk about coming full circle at this point. I'm sorry.
I just want everybody to know that this wasn't something structured to keep it
We
out of
didn't
town
know.
meeting.
We didn't know that either.
No. But you see, when we're going to that proposed thing for citizen warrant articles,
Yeah.
that was one of the things I wanted to insert in there for people to understand was that just because we say it can go to town meeting, doesn't mean we're blessing it at this point
Right.
in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, I view us more as a gatekeeper role. And if it's totally out of whack, that's one thing. Again, we all bring our own personal things to the table as well too, our own personal insights, which I think are invaluable to share. And boy, did I just derail that train of thought. But that to me is an important thing as well too, to say, okay, let's, if it looks halfway solid, let's let it run itself out at town meeting and let the bigger scope decide. And no, I'm done.
Well, following that thread, I had thought if we voted against it, it would go to town meeting nonetheless. So I'm not wanting to give up on that prospect, just to ask one more way to slice this, whether we could recommend that it goes to town meeting, but we don't endorse it. Is that possible? Or the other aspect is we've got a split vote here, right? So I don't know how that adds up either.
A split vote would be
The split vote-
essentially, no, it would be like
Means a
there'd be
no.
no report.
It's like a no.
There's no
and-
action, basically.
Right,
Split
and
vote's
quite
no
frankly, no matter how you still slice that at this point, it's a negative vote. It's
Yeah,
a negative
it
vote.
is.
Yeah. So, that's, like I said. So I hope that helps define it a little bit.
Yep.
In terms of that.
I mean,
And
it's unfortunate in a way, but I'm not prepared to
that's okay.
say I favor this because
okay.
I
And I
don't.
hear you
Yeah,
loud and clear
yeah.
on that. So hold
Yeah.
just for 1 second. Go ahead. I saw it.
The language is specific, that it has to
Yes,
be
sir.
a favorable, it has to be
This book is new, see?
brand new.
It'll get old soon.
We like that actually.
It has to be recommended in the final report of the planning board.
Right.
Now, if it's recommended, you could put a comment that this is only recommended, or we could say that the board split, had a tie on this, and that in fact it did not achieve a majority, and it's only being sent here with a recommendation to the extent that we feel that town meeting should decide this issue.
Is that possible?
Yes. Yeah. Your motion would have to be, we make a recommendation based on, and would include in our comment an explanation as to why it has why it's recommended. You see what I'm saying?
So it's recommended to be considered, but we don't have a substantive recommendation one way or the other because we're split.
Because the board split.
Right. Or you could also say as well too that just simply the board feels that this should be vetted through town meeting.
But does that
But
That
that'll
sounds to me
constitute
more
not a
like-
favorable
That sounds
between the
more to
2
me
years?
like what the
within the
Total.
2 years?
group here
I'm
is.
just asking.
Yeah,
Might be a town council question.
Again,
I don't want to belabor the point either. So, but
The-
go ahead. I don't want to.
Can I just say the impact? So somebody would have to call the article. Because if it's not called, remember,
Goes by the
it gets voted as recommended. So with a favorable recommendation, it has to be clear that somebody has to call it out for discussion. Now, the town moderator may have just an open discussion on every article because it's small, it's a special within a special. But that, I'm just alerting you to the fact that if it's not called for discussion, it gets voted as recommended, and the recommendation would have to be favorable.
So.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to rephrase this a different way. So even if the planning board issues a negative recommendation, right, someone can still call that article out.
No.
That's what I thought.
No.
That article.
That's what I was.
It
That
doesn't-
article is now
It's dead.
put away.
So failure for you to
There you go.
issue a report, or if you issue a negative,
Yeah.
it's dead and can't be discussed.
There you go. Or called or anything.
No, it's over.
Thank you. All right. Good.
But I'm sorry, I'm still a little unsure here. So is there another way to slice this to say, we recommend that it be considered, but we don't have a substantive recommendation? Is that deemed a negative recommendation?
Your motion has to be favorable, but you could explain in a detailed comment that the only reason this was given a favorable recommendation is because the board felt this matter needed to be discussed and decided by town meeting, and could identify the fact that the board members split on this,
Right.
and that,
FinCom.
And that-
Before.
you know, had you voted along those lines, town meeting wouldn't have had the opportunity to hear it at all. So, I mean, we have a little bit of time to put that into a comment, so that could be, you know, shown on the screen before town meeting. But that would be the only way that I can think to do it.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Okay.
So we could make a motion that's, I guess I would say, unfavorable majority-wise, but state no. We have to be favorable with the caveat that explaining that we didn't have,
We don't make a recommendation as
Right.
to passage.
Right.
yeah. Like the FinCom
Or
has done
maybe
stuff like this
something
before, I've
most-
noted, I've read.
The motion
Few.
would have to be, moved that, the zoning for these properties be changed from LUG2 to R40. And then separate from your motion, there's a
Correct.
planning board comment.
Okay.
And then that's where you would explain
Yeah.
why the
Why.
motion was the motion.
I'm tempted.
Okay.
Does that help kind of vet this around all different sides? All right, so if we want to move ahead here, the first thing we really should do is close the public hearing.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
You have one first?
Oh,
Sorry.
Dave.
Oh,
I didn't
I'm
see
so sorry, Dave. My apologies, sir.
I saw you
My
take off your
apologies.
glasses, and I didn't want to yell, "Hey, Barry, it's me."
Oh, you can do that. That's fine.
I actually left, and I apologize. Something I could not say no to, but I thought that second half of the discussion is as a taxpayer so critical. I'm not here trying to convince you I have the answer, but I really do understand that 40B is not going away. I really believe from the depths of my experience that it is only going to gain momentum across the Commonwealth. There are a lot of politicians, a lot of very well thought out people who are just committed to changing communities to make this happen. That's not going to go away. And if nothing else, the opportunity to have substantial discussions at town meeting every day and every year about what we're doing, from looking at zoning to thinking about incentives for developers and bringing this to town meeting sends it, because I do a lot of work for developers. There are a lot of good people out there. And a lot of them actually are friends and family of people in this room. They're not all doing anything bad. There's a lot of people who believe that 40B is trying to solve a big problem. But it sends enough of a message to them for them to think about, should I respond, and think differently than I might otherwise because that zoning option didn't exist. And I don't think this board has to make a decision as much as move it to let the town have a discussion. So
Yeah.
for whatever it's worth, I really appreciate that discussion.
Can the motion be that we recommend that the article be presented at town meeting without a recommendation? No.
Move to close the public hearing.
All right.
Second.
Hey,
Oh,
that's okay.
We can
Motion's
still
made.
talk
Yeah,
about it.
that's okay. We can have internal dialogue. I needed to
Yeah.
catch myself for a second. All right, motion's been seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Any other comments? from the
yes,
board?
I want to just,
Sir.
I want to add something that Dave said that I have written down here from earlier today. Zoning, again, zoning is the answer to open space, to steering development. We used to talk about sprawl on Nantucket, which is kind of, that's a 90s word, but it was used a lot. Sustainability and all that stuff. We've got half-acre zoning at Hummock Pond. We've got half-acre zoning out by you. We have 1 acre in Pulpus, all over the place. Pippin's Way, all that land out there is in 1 acre. It's kind of weird when you really look at the zoning map and say, man, what's up with this 1 acre out here? You know, in the middle of nowhere, okay? But the discussion part that Dave mentioned is that's why I go change my shirt and go talk on TV again for only 400 people to watch in 3 months, but I'm not going on Facebook. So this learning zoning, understanding how we got here, where we're headed, how much ground cover we have, that kind of discussion is priceless, because that's the problem. The luckiest people alive were in the Bartlett Road area for landowners. You kidding me? And Old South Road too, but I'm talking about all that land on Bartlett Road was in RC. Every single piece of it, right to the ponds, because they were in charge, right? And these two are the only ones that figured out we can try to unwind a little of this stuff. Saved mizzen mast with this wild idea of R10 limited. No one never even heard of it. They come up with it. All in favor, say aye. But that stuff is not, it's already built, so no one cares anymore. But if that was coming in today to get built, they'd have to build another building. We'd have to go to the high school for the meeting, like the ZBA. So we're still in the fix mode, fixing the stuff that we just couldn't fix. I was asked by a former selectman 2 years ago this question. Never mention names. You can all probably figure it out. Said, why don't we just fix zoning in one meeting? I was like, I didn't even really know how to answer that question, because it's hard enough to get one little thing done. I don't see how anyone would believe that this map from 72 to 2018 would just be accepted. It would never happen, in my opinion. But the discussion part that Dave mentioned to me is the biggest issue. I've said this now for a while, like learning, explaining it. Town meeting's the biggest place, but it's the hardest place to talk because of the way the rules work. So I would love to see this motion that the staff is bringing up. I'm not exactly sure how to make that motion because it's kind of complicated, but I'm in agreement with that idea. The town meeting should discuss this with the understanding that we did not have the votes to support it, as far as the split vote for the conventional method of giving a favorable recommendation. So I don't want to make that motion until staff kind of tells me what to say a little bit. Again, simpler.
So,
A little simpler.
I'll make a motion if that suits. I don't want to put the staff on the spot.
Well, you know what I mean.
As I understand it, what you said and what Barry said, and I think I agree with it, some of us at least, move to advance this proposal to town meeting, that we affirmatively have a majority to do that. But in addition, that we include comments
Yes.
that indicate the board was split 2-2 in terms of the merits.
Correct.
So that, if, Barry, go ahead.
I'm not sure I'd say 2-2.
Okay,
I'd just say that the board, because there's, like I said, for me, there's a lot of underlying dialogue here as well too. So I'm, like I said, you've heard my proposal of just wanting to move it forward. Am I necessarily in favor?
Well, should we be?
well,
should-
You see where I'm
how
going?
about let's do it in two pieces then?
Yeah.
The first would be that we affirmatively
Perfect.
move it forward to town meeting if we have a majority vote to do that. The second would be, second motion separately would be, my opinion is I'd like to be recorded as having a split view, that we didn't have a majority to substantively recommend it, but we nonetheless had a majority to send it forward as a topic. Now, you may disagree with that, but I'd like to be on record that I feel sort of hypocritical if I were to send it forward saying nothing and then get up at the meeting and say, no, I
Yeah.
oppose it. So if you,
All right,
if you hear where it's coming from, that's
Yep.
So
where,
let's
agree
just
with
go,
that.
let's just go to the first motion, because
Yep.
that's important, all right?
but we're
So
gonna take up both, right?
Yes.
we're definitely gonna talk about the second one, but
Okay.
I wanna get the first one cleared off the deck if you're good with that, which is just giving it a positive recommendation. Okay, now we'll get to the comment afterwards if that's agreeable. So that motion's made and
I'll second it.
discussion on that issue alone. Hearing,
This is simply a simple vote on whether we recommend,
To be taken up.
to be taken up
make
to
however you want to say it, just recommending a positive motion.
advance it to town meeting. That's the only way it gets there, is by us giving it a positive recommendation. If the board, if the
How are we
board's,
going to record?
But the
Don't we need to
second
do the
part-
first?
Well, you want to do the second first and then come back to the first?
we can do that too.
Sure.
I'm happy
Fine.
to have a little more discussion at this point.
It's fine.
Then can I?
Andrew's got the
can
language
I,
written down.
Frame the
that she's-
second half and then we can,
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
I move that we include in our report, an indication that we did not have, that we had a split of opinion, we didn't have a majority favorably to report on the merits.
Okay.
But we,
And then the second.
we,
the second-
no, we would, but we felt strongly that town meeting should have the,
Right. I
Yeah.
really do feel
This
that it
conversation.
is appropriate to say, I'm not in favor of it, and I'm not gonna vote for it at town meeting, and I feel pretty hypocritical if I left this meeting and somehow the
We couldn't do
implication
anything
was.
about it.
Right, and if that second part, the comments, is not included, I'll vote against advancing it.
yeah. How you feel?
Yes. No, I get it. And I think it's an important part of your comment to point out the section of the state law that sort of brought us to this point. That this is a repetitive petition, and because of that, the failure to make the report or negative would have meant the town meeting didn't
Exactly
get.
right.
Couldn't even call
Couldn't
it.
even, right.
That's the meat and potatoes of the whole thing, that the public couldn't even call it.
Yep, I'd be happy.
Under
with that.
normal
I don't know
conditions,
about
they
you.
can if it's a negative recommendation.
Well,
I think each
I mean,
of us should be entitled to have our sentiments built into this. To the
Yeah.
record. So,
I think that, what Andrew just said, actually strengthens this situation of it wouldn't be allowed to even be discussed in a citizen article at all because of the 18 months.
And we can finalize a comment, I can circulate a comment that you all can contribute to before it's finalized.
You want to get it out of the way now. I can see it. And
I think, no, I have no problem with it going to town meeting, and I really wish this wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
I will vote against it at the town meeting, and I was prepared to vote against giving it a favorable recommendation. That's the way I feel. I still feel, I'm concerned, this is just me, I'm concerned about saying anything that sounds like I'm saying I view this as being favorable. And so I'm probably going to vote no both ways. That doesn't mean that it won't pass. So just so everybody kind of knows where I am.
No, I get what you're
Okay.
saying.
It's just I don't, I understand the
I'll say
split.
I thank you for that, because if you had made this motion, I'd do what you just did. I mean, but I do think your point about it's only fair with the signatures and the sentiment and good faith and everything of the proponent, that I don't think people who signed that petition, if they had thought that we could stop it from moving ahead, they would have been here tonight.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that that was the case until we were back here tonight. So I think we owe it to people that they really know what we thought, right?
And again, a lot of people think that if there's a negative recommendation, that it automatically doesn't, I'm talking about just a
Right.
regular article, doesn't have this issue with the state, that it's like dies. Like if the FinCom gives negative, that doesn't mean that it can't be positive.
No.
No, I'm just saying, so that this is a unique situation. I've had this before I've seen comments like this with FinCom with some articles. But this is unique. I mean, John's not here, which makes it impossible to have a majority, which is also sort of part of this as well. But outside of that, what Andrew has, said, I think makes a lot of sense, as far as to have everything on that screen from Mary that says what we're saying and what happened here, because there's nobody here. And I don't think there's thousands of people watching this on TV that are going to know what we said.
If they knew you were on, they would.
Yeah, you would. You'd at least get 400.
With your cookies, they would, I can tell you that. Those are good. So, but I think that it's important that sentiment is in writing, because this is a very, very emotional issue. And but I want it to be educational. And that's my thing. Other than just the conscience issue, but this is an educational tool for people to learn and understand what the ramifications of bad zoning decisions can give us. So, did you make a motion, Judith?
If the hearing's closed.
The hearing's closed,
You bet,
so.
you left.
Yeah, here's what
Sorry.
I did, if I could get over to, I don't forget.
We
We've closed
on
the public
this issue,
hearing,
on this
Sally.
issue.
This is really down to the board making a final determination about where it's going.
Okay,
All right, but thank you, though.
no, I just discovered something looking at my new zoning map.
All right,
Oh.
but that's,
All right.
yeah, I'm sorry,
I thought the R40 was LUG1 and
It's R40, I know.
No, it's
All right.
10%.
I know.
all right, all
We
right.
know that.
Board, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Anyway,
So do
okay.
we
So,
Yeah.
wanna
all right, so let's
start
get
with part
to
two
the,
and then go to part one?
here, let me give it,
Yeah,
try this. So, and this will not be perfect. I'm sorry, I'm drafting this and talking to you at the same time virtually. The board was very split on this decision. However, the article was purely advanced for town meeting to have the ability to interact on this article. That's it.
Yep.
It basically says there was really no consensus to be had here, but we're doing only one thing. Moving it so town meeting can have its.
I don't think that's
I
gonna
don't
be
think that's
the
gonna-
requirement, and,
No, but it's a comment.
oh,
It's
Addition.
I'm at your comment stage.
oh, okay.
I'm trying to figure out
What
what's.
do you mean, a
what's-
comment for the minutes?
No,
No.
comment on the,
No, the board, besides saying yay or nay to the.
I need to be more explicit than that, so I can't sign on to that.
Okay. I'm just giving it
I
a step.
appreciate that, but
Okay.
if the one we've got on the table now, which is referencing as you did the state statute about you can't go back to this, if that part doesn't pass, then you could come up with a substitute.
Are you guys good with what he's recommended? Just
Why don't you
Kind
read
of-
back what you think we have?
Okay. Well, I'd like to, to wordsmith this all perfectly, I just would like you all to sort of agree on the concepts and then we'll get you something, but clearly there's a split of opinion. A favorable report is required by operation of law for this to be received back at town meeting, and that's 40A, Section 5. And that, I guess somehow that the fact that it's received that should not
construe.
should not indicate that the board has reached a conclusion that this should pass, but that there should be a discussion by town meeting. It does need the 2/3 majority in order to pass.
Yep.
So that's basically the concept I'm working with, unless there's some other points in here. I mean, the repetitive petition, I think, has to be
Yeah, I mean, I
mentioned
think
as
it
well.
clearly needs to be explained. I mean, I think you know where I'm voting either way, so I'm not going to get terribly worked up over how you're voting, how you're framing
Right.
the motion. But
Yeah,
I think that should be.
No, but how it looks on the screen is extremely important. So,
I heard that
that's
expressed very
what I
clearly
thought
from
you said.
both of
Yeah.
you, that is a factor here, right?
But that, the fact that it is a repetitive application, yes, it's a factor. There's other factors, but that is definitely a factor.
Right.
I mean, I think the way I tried to frame it, you said couldn't be. We can't say we're recommending this solely for the purpose of advancing it to the town meeting without a recommendation as to
Right.
Yeah, no.
passage. You said that doesn't work.
It can work in a comment, it can work in the comment, but not in the motion.
Okay.
And Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, besides putting it up on the screen, that can also be verbally delivered as well too.
I was
right?
just
Oh,
about.
sure.
Because
I mean,
I,
don't have a
you know,
problem with
it's-
that. I'm still gonna
That's
vote
good
against it,
point.
but-
and
I understand.
No,
You know,
I was
that's-
thinking that, Barry.
I
That's a
have
good
no
one.
problem being the chair, getting up in front of town meeting and saying exactly what you all agree to at this point, so it's not just sitting there on a screen. It's there for people to hear it.
Well, there would have to
You
be
know
an
what I'm saying?
explanation as well.
I'm not going
I
off,
hear
I'm
you.
not talking about going off the script, I'm talking about sticking to the script, just putting a voice behind it, that's all.
And
So
maybe,
it's there.
maybe Andrew has to explain it, either you or Andrew, one or the
Whatever,
other. But
whatever.
somebody
I-
will have to do that, I mean, for sure.
Will-
Is it a
Yes.
protocol that if hypothetically Fritz or I wanted to step away from sitting with you guys and go stand up and raise a hand and say, I'm speaking for myself now, I oppose it for these reasons, is that acceptable? I'm not.
You can do that down front.
I'm not
not an
prohibited
issue.
from doing that, am I?
No,
McLaughlin used to do that.
Go ahead. That made me,
I mean, that's, I don't think, I can't
hear
see
you.
why that would be, why you'd be prohibited from doing that.
no, it's just that, again, saying, I'm citizen, blah, blah, and I'm against it, but now I'm planning board and I'm in favor of it. I don't think there's a problem with saying, I'm a planning board member. I would have voted no on this article. I'm opposed to it passing tonight. However, I wanted the opportunity for
Yeah.
this body
Yeah,
to make the
that's all
final
I would say,
decision.
But I just mean, I don't have to sit there and say nothing if I get recognized and say just what you said, which is what I intend to say.
Sure. No, but I think you should stay right up front. You don't need to step off into the audience.
I mean,
Yeah.
FinCom does that all the time.
Fair
and,
enough.
and I know at times when the votes
I
come.
just, sometimes I think people get confused in sometimes space to be in a different place helps them understand
Or-
where you're coming from, but
Yeah.
whatever the deal is, I'll go with it.
And, you know, I mean.
I think it makes us look better and more, I don't want to say congenial, and it might not be the right word, but working together, being honest,
Yeah.
sitting together, agreeing or not. I don't think that's, I think
Okay,
that's
that's
better than it is
Yeah.
if you sit somewhere else.
Okay.
You know,
Oh,
John
tell
never
my
sat with us,
husband
but
he's
he
gonna
never
bring
was
some
gonna sit with us
popcorn
anyway.
bites.
It was, he's the only one that never sat with us.
Right, or, I mean, you can,
Okay.
you can sit at the table as well too, start the dialogue and say, okay, so there's no confusion.
Yeah,
I'm walking out here now.
Mm-hmm.
Here you go.
Okay, thank you.
Just, you're going something's gonna pop at the last minute, so you
Sure.
feel comfortable with it, and I think that's important as
Okay,
well.
sounds good.
I mean, this is emotional, Judith.
Mm.
I mean, I don't think this is, zoning is emotional. I think the whole issue is emotional. The zoning, this to me is a french fry compared to the rest of it. This is a big deal. You know, what the ramifications are here. More conversation, the better. You know, there's a lot of people sign those sheets that aren't in favor of, that voted against the original the original,
Great.
yeah, 1 acre zoning. You know what I'm saying? But they see, well, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't be so adversarial, but not everybody thinks that way. Okay? So it's a good
They
conversation.
also need to understand, and I know when you present or whatever, this doesn't change the.
Doesn't change anything.
The 40B's on track, whatever it's gonna do.
Oh,
So-
absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But you know what I mean, if we do a lot of hours worth of talking about this stuff, but people who are raising kids and, you know, going to work and don't hang out with
Yeah.
TV shows starring us, they may not understand it.
106 Surfside
All right, let's, I don't
was
wanna
the
get too-
same.
I
Don't-
think we
don't-
know where we're going.
Yeah.
Right,
so
don't
let
get
me
off,
just
don't get
do
off
it.
the topic.
Saying.
Kind of, I hear you. But I want us to
Okay,
get a
so we gotta get
comfort
the
level here
motion
with
down.
this. So, do you want, are we good with the approximated language he's given?
I am with that, I just wanted to flag one more possible.
Yes, ma'am.
Configuration here is if the moderator or town council said, this is bogus, you can't do it this way, I trust you, Andrew, that is unlikely to happen, but, it's conceivable to be that somebody might look at this and say, that's too complicated by half, or you're trying to have it both ways, or, it seems to me really legitimate, given the statute and everything else, but, if you're gonna circulate it to us, would you also run it by those folks in case we would need to reconvene if it somehow turns into a pumpkin?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm wondering whether it should be run by the moderator or town council before the meeting, just so there isn't.
We'll do that.
Yeah, just so there isn't something and all of a sudden it's coming up, wait, you can't do that, and then where everybody's in the room going,
Right.
what do you mean, you know?
Yeah, no, I
So
mean-
if what we do now, if the moderator and town council are either say, you know, you really can't do that,
And-
then we can,
And
there's some
just-
resolution before we're sitting there at the meeting.
Right. Just so you're,
Town meeting too, so.
Oh,
what's that?
Said we also have a meeting
Thank
prior
you.
to town meeting.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's
Oh,
already
the
posted.
15 minutes ahead of time.
Right, so
Yeah.
if,
That's me.
Hold on, we'll get
Yeah,
back to that.
okay.
so if need be, at that stage, we can pull, you know, and
We can-
moderator and town council say, what the
Right,
hell are you
right.
thinking?
I think it's just
We could
important
totally
that this
change that
get
to-
clarified. It isn't
Yeah.
a last minute sounding like we're all idiots that we were,
Yeah.
you know. Okay.
That's fair game. All right,
So,
so which one do we want to tackle first? We were kind
well,
of,
maybe the thing is, Fritz, do you wanna vote against the whole thing?
Yeah, so I don't think it probably doesn't need to be broken up. I mean, like I say, for my reasons, I'm going to vote no
I got you.
to that. And, you know, but it only requires a majority, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So I will vote, I'm going to be voting no. So, you know, however, I don't think it's as important.
Right.
As long as we have an adequate explanation as to why and what the purpose was and why we did or didn't do something, you know, I will have recorded my vote no anyway, so.
Gotcha.
Call the question.
I think we're there though. Yeah, I really do.
Yeah.
So we'll just combine things into one
Yeah, but
swell.
we're gonna have to vote on it now, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping to do now.
Yep.
All right, so the motion and seconded from what I've understood is to advance, this will get a positive recommendation from this board You've heard Andrew's comment that'll be attached into at this point with a little bit of refinement. And that's what's gonna go forward to town meeting. If we're all clear on that, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, let that reflect that's a 3-1 vote at this stage. Thank you.
Can we go
That
home?
Welcome.
was, yes, you know what? So, I'm just,
That's about as cordial and amiable as you could have any discussion, I think.
so,
The cookies.
30 seconds. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was a
Yeah.
big thing.
Well, you
And,
did a good job, the chair.
well,
This
thank
is-
you.
and-
Well,
Thank
and-
you.
Well,
and
I
think-
appreciate what you guys did as well too, and taking a lot of time out of your day today.
Right.
And if we didn't have this recess, Andrew might not have dug this up. This is very good. I mean, it may never happen.
I'm
again.
sorry I dug it up. I mean, I didn't dig it up.
No,
It just occurred to me.
No, and I appreciate that. That really
This is interesting.
caused
I
us
mean,
to
we
look back at that, so I appreciate that question.
It would have been easier had we not come up with that at the last minute, but I mean,
That's true.
it is what it is. So.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Anyway.
It happened one time, you said?
Yes.
No, it's
No, no,
not.
no, no, I'm not. I just have to vote the way I feel.
That's fine. We're adjourned, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did we vote to adjourn? No.